has become the site of a proxy war with big players involved. Meanwhile, the bigger players, US and Russia, continue to fight for space here. If the American invasion of Iraq strengthened the hands of Iran in the region, the American intervention in Syria has brought Russia back into the game in West Asia. Increasingly, countries in the region and beyond are seeking dialogue with Russia. If the list of high-profile visitors at the Kremlin is anything to go by, then Putin seems to be cementing his role as peacemaker. WION's Ramesh Ramachandran has more.
This week sees a flurry of visits to and from West Asia. President Mahmoud Abbas of Palestine is in Moscow today for talks with Russia's President Vladimir Putin. It comes 2 weeks after Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu discussed about Palestine and Syria with Putin in Moscow. And come Thursday, Jordan's King Abdullah will be in Moscow for talks with Putin. Mahmoud Abbas says he is ready for peace talks with Israel. Flanked by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Abbas said in Ramallah over the weekend that a multilateral mechanism for West Asia peace is the ideal way to broker peace. Abbas has dismissed the United States as a mediator after it recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Palestine is for a two-state solution with 1967 borders and East Jerusalem as its capital. So, who will step in to fill the breach? Could it be Russia? Or will a new multilateral coalition of countries such as China and India replace the quartet comprising the US, Russia, European Union and the United Nations? Already, Washington has declared that its security strategy will focus on great power competition more than terrorism. Trump and Mattis have named Russia and China as rivals. The Indo-Pacific is one possible theater of conflict. The other is West Asia.
I am asking Congress to pass legislation to help ensure American foreign assistance dollars always serve American interests and only go to friends of America, not enemies of America.
The US has threatened to cut funds to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian refugees. That and tensions between Israel and Iran have turned West Asia into a powder keg. With Arab leaders seeming to believe that the US may have little to offer, Putin could be a more credible peacemaker. Ramesh Ramachandran, WION.
Watching Gravitas, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is back home from his visit to West Asia. The last stop was Oman, where he signed 8 key agreements. In a gesture reflecting the warmth and personal chemistry between Prime Minister Modi and Sultan Qaboos, breakfast for the PM came from the presidential palace, and the Sultan paid personal attention. And on the 11th of February, the dinner went beyond midnight, reflecting the chord that the two leaders seem to have struck. Here's a wrap of the Prime Minister's last day's engagements.
Two places but one unifying theme. As the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi wrapped up his three-nation tour of West Asia, he chose the century-old Shiva temple and the Grand Sultan Qaboos Mosque in Oman to send a singular message of how centuries-old ties bind the region to India.
There is also a very special India connection to this mosque. The fact that the entire mosque has been made using the Indian sandstone. This particular temple here, it was built by Gujarati traders and businessmen who made Muscat their home centuries ago.
It was a theme that Prime Minister Modi repeated through the 4-day trip. India and West Asia have been partners for centuries.
5000 साल पहले भी गुजरात के लोथल पोर्ट से लकड़ी के जहाज ओमान तक आते थे.
The highlight of the Prime Minister's visit was also his address to the Indian diaspora at the packed Sultan Qaboos Stadium. He praised the Sultan and how the Indian community had helped build the nation.
ओमान भौगोलिक रूप से भारत का खाड़ी क्षेत्र में सबसे निकटतम हमारा पड़ोसी है।
Prime Minister Modi addressed the Indian community from the royal box of the stadium. Special gestures for the Prime Minister both in Oman and in the UAE were not just because Indians form a dominant expatriate community in these countries, it was also because both nations are key to securing India's energy security needs as it powers on the growth path.
हमारे हिंदुस्तान में जो मध्य प्रदेश प्रांत है, वहां जो बीना रिफाइनरी है, वो बीना रिफाइनरी ओमान के सहयोग से चल रही है।
There were 2 agreements and 6 MOUs signed during the Prime Minister's visit to Oman, including those on strengthening cooperation in trade and investment, energy, defense and security, food security, legal and judicial cooperation, health, tourism, and peaceful uses of outer space.
With his visit to the Grand Mosque of Oman, the Prime Minister has officially concluded his 3-nation tour that started on the 9th of February. Starting with Palestine, he went to UAE where he had some crucial meets in Abu Dhabi as well as Dubai, and lastly the ever-friendly Oman. Well, the Prime Minister has certainly managed to further the West Asia policy that India has been driving under his regime. With video journalist Neeraj Patel and Daniele Pagani in Palestine, this is Nishchita for WION Muscat.
Cape Town is making headlines because of a severe water crisis threatening to cut off supply to over 4 million people. But it's not the only one that stares at a dry spell. The clock is ticking for at least 11 other cities across the world, including one from India, that may run out of water in the near future. Here's more.
After a severe water crisis has hit South Africa's capital Cape Town, the drought-stricken city is expected to run completely out of water in 3 months. This date has been dubbed as Day Zero. Hundreds of Cape Town residents are now being forced to stand in long queues to stock up on whatever little water they can get their hands on.
I think there's going to be chaos. I mean, I hope Day Zero never comes, but I can see with people wanting to come here and the desperation for water, I think we're still going to realize that water is more valuable than oil. I don't want to be too critical, but I think better plans should have been put in place a long time already.
We use our shower water, which we put into the toilets, and of course we wash in a little basin, and we bucky wash when we take a shower. So that has been a major change for us.
But Cape Town, it seems, is just the tip of the iceberg. A quarter of the world's major cities are facing water shortages. 11 major cities are most likely going to run out of drinking water soon. Some of the cities are capitals while others are major financial or tourist hubs. But this does not make them immune to a looming water crisis. One of Brazil's biggest cities, Sao Paulo, is the most likely to run out of water in the near future. It went through a similar ordeal as Cape Town in 2015 when the main reservoir in Sao Paulo fell below the 4% capacity level. Taking the second spot is the Indian IT hub of Bengaluru. Not a single lake in the city is suitable for drinking or bathing due to severe water pollution. Toxic froth has become an all too familiar sight in Bengaluru's largest lakes, the Bellandur and Varthur. And believe it or not, last month a massive fire broke out in the Bellandur lake that raged for 7 hours. Property development projects and outdated drainage systems make matters worse for Bengaluru residents. Poor air quality is not the only issue Beijing residents have to deal with. China is home to almost 20% of the world's population but has only 7% of the world's fresh water. Official figures from 2015 showed that 40% of Beijing's surface water was polluted to the point of not being useful even for agriculture or industrial use. A surprising entry on the list is London. Though the city is known for its overcast and rainy weather, it gets only half the rainfall New York receives. London draws 80% of its water from rivers Thames and River Lea. The coastal city of Miami is a tropical paradise, but its seawater is the exact reason behind the looming water crisis. An early 20th century project to drain nearby swamps had an unforeseen result. Water from the Atlantic Ocean contaminated the Biscayne aquifer.
It's the worst drought, in fact, in over a century in the South African city of Cape Town. It rained yesterday, but it hasn't mitigated the seriousness of the problem they face. Fearing the worst, in fact, residents of the port city are preparing for the so-called 0 day when they will run out of water. Take a look at what their life looks like.
As Cape Town suffers the region's worst drought in over a century, locals here are preparing for the worst. The city has announced that it could be forced to shut off the taps in the middle of May, a deadline that has become known as Day Zero. Meanwhile, anxious residents are doing what they can to reduce their daily water consumption, collecting an additional 25-litre ration at one of the city's natural springs.
We've just sort of had to reconfigure our lives in a way that there is no municipal water, because that's what it is required of us in terms of preparing for Day Zero. Opening that tap and there's nothing.
But in some parts of the city, like this informal settlement, not having running water is a fact of life. Residents here rely on communal taps. While Cape Town's wealthier areas account for 65% of the city's overall water consumption, these densely populated communities only use around 5%. And when the taps are off, it is more than just an inconvenience.
Oh, it's terrible. Because sometimes there's not even a note when they shut out the water is shut out. You just when you go to the tap and the tap switch off, and you are working, the kids supposed to go to school, and by the toilet, so the hygiene as well is affecting us because we don't have water to flush the shared toilet.
Under police supervision, residents will have to queue for their daily 25 litres water ration. Officials say plans are in place to protect those who are most vulnerable. Cape Town city centre and hospitals will remain on the municipal water supply, while old age homes and orphanages will have water delivered via large tankers.
A little bit more push from everybody's side, we can avoid Day Zero altogether, and I can tell you nobody will be happier than myself and the disaster management officials in the water department, because even if Day Zero ran perfectly, the misery and the social and financial impact on the city would be devastating.
The Geopolitics Dam, a reservoir supplying the city with water, has already dropped to 12.5% in recent months, and experts warn that anything below 10% could be unusable. In an attempt to tap into any possible alternative sources, the city has even started to drill boreholes to make use of aquifers, although the environmental impact of these schemes is yet unknown.